Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. This is Arnis Luks here, and we are Notes from Around, Episode 1. I'd like to welcome my guest panellist today, David Smith. Welcome, David Smith.
Good morning.
No worries. Pleased to have you, David, and Robert Klinck. Welcome, Robert.
Good evening, Arnie. From another part of the world.
You are, that's right. And Wallace Klinck. Welcome, Wallace Klinck.
Well, hi, Arnie, from whatever part of the universe you're in.
Good on you, Wally. All right, so obviously there are some significant events happening around the world, and I want to touch on just some of them in our major newspapers in Australia, and I've also got a couple of other newspapers around the world. So first of all, in the Australian, it's talking about the lockdown. They're just imposing another lockdown in Brisbane. There has been 1 or 2 cases there of COVID, and so they're going to shut down the entire city of, I think it's about 3 million people. That's the Australian. And then again, the Financial Review is similar. Epoch Times is talking about, in particular, the virus in China, different strains coming out of it, and of course the strong points of view in regard to what happened yesterday with the capital of America, the Washington, the demonstration, and also the fact that there is some certain things that are going on that are that not necessarily straightforward. They're subversive by nature, and they're painting an entirely false picture. Wallace Klinck, your thoughts, please, Wallace.
Well, I certainly agree that they are painting a false picture. I don't really profess to know the precise nature of this virus or variants of the virus or whatever, but I do know, in my mind, absolutely and certainly, that it is being used for highly political ends. And those ends involve control of the public's mind and behavior. In other words, we're being manipulated, and it's for the purposes of centralization of power. There's nothing emancipating about what they're doing for the individual.
No worries. Thank you. Yeah.
Well, it's mysterious in a way to visualize or to see the way these things are being pursued in the media on such a universal basis. And one would wonder, just where is the center? Where's the control center of all this? Where is it coming from? How can it be identified and isolated for everyone to see? And I think that's what ultimately has to be done, because this is a deliberate attempt gradually to dispossess the public, which they're doing through the markets by ruining the economy, and which they're doing directly by offering people assistance from the public treasury by drawing on the public credit. So we're being manipulated really, really from pretty well all fronts, from orthodox sources. And I don't think that it's up to us, who after all established governments, and we have elected governments. They should be serving our interests and not some mysterious arcane policies and interests that are residing in some unknown place, which we simply are not allowed to see.
Yeah, that's a very important observation, Wally. I've spent this last few days reading a book by Nesta Webster, Secret Societies and Subversive Movements. And it really is an eye-opener to begin to recognise that behind the facade, yes, that's right, that very book, behind the facade of what might be a reputable organisation, there can lurk a hidden hand, if you like, that exploits the good that they do, exploits it to the advantage of others. And I was going through, if you like, a book on a particular industry the other day, and as a consequence of a change of policy and a change of CEO, the share price went from it essentially dropped to 1/10 of its value without any public scandal whatsoever, but rather just as a policy of the outworking of the directors. And I find that extraordinary, that the directors are placed there in order to derive benefit for the shareholders, and yet in actual fact the value of the stock progressively over a period of years was reduced to 1/10 of it. And so I thought to myself, hang on, they really are not doing the right thing. Now, in a political organisation, or even in a media organisation, or even in a church, this same type of thing can happen, where the hidden hand, a hidden hand, can actually be working in by design for objectives that are not necessarily clear to the people participating, simply that the leadership, some parts of the leadership, are working in unison with other parties to bring about a different change. Certainly different. In the United States, the Capitol, what appeared to be a peaceful demonstration, and then there are reports now that a lot of opposition demonstrators arrived, were escorted into the building, and of course, as a consequence of the entrance into the building past the secure doors of the external part of the building, secure doors. This is the Capitol. This is the head of, if you like, Congress, and you tell me they can't close the doors to demonstrators, and they're allowed into the building, and then as a consequence of that, a woman who had served her country patriotically for 14 years in the Air Force was shot by, at the moment, suspected assailant, who may be a policeman, may not, but either way she was shot and killed inside that building. And it really is so distressing. That was a peaceful demonstration challenging the validity, and now I notice that the essentially the Republicans, there is a complete capitulation on the fraudulent outworking of the election. So it really is, it's almost like a play, an orchestrated play unfolding in front of us. David Smith, your thoughts, please.
Oh, I don't know where to start there. I'd like to go back to my notes from around, and Jonathan Ison said that these fellows that we can see and hear on the media, they're merely sheep that are following the orders of their own programmer. If we go chasing whoever is behind all the evil in the society, we can be presenting fear instead of hope. The whole presentation of social credit as presented to us by Douglas was hope for society. And Christ's words reinforce that we are to overcome evil with good. So our job is to present hope rather than playing into the fear game. That's negative, especially to the youth of Australia who've lost hope. And in spite of all that Christ taught, Christianity has not presented that hope for today. They've presented it for a futuristic kingdom, and therefore they've lost the youth of today. That's the point I'd like to make at this stage. That's
an excellent opening salvo, David, because I I thought of this morning's forum over the last few days, and there was something that clearly came to my mind, and they were the words of St. Paul when he talks about faith, hope, and love, and the greatest of these is love. Faith, faith. You have faith. You have faith in your neighbour. You have faith that when you go to the market you can exchange something for a fair price. You have faith that your political representative will do the right thing. You have faith that the policeman will actually protect your interests, uphold the law. You have faith that the media institutions and our, if you like, our parliamentary institutions are going to work in the correct manner. This is faith. And of course, from this comes hope. Hope not only for people working together, but also hope that the rains that will come, the season will come, the crops will grow, there will be an abundance, there will be security. And at the outworking of this faith and hope is mutual love and cooperation. It is love. It's an actual relationship. Now, Douglas harnessed this trilogy, if you like, in the words social credit, social cohesion, the way people got on, the way they could actually work together in unison, in unity, not necessarily doing the same things, but at least in a clear objective of doing good for themselves and good for their neighbour. These are the, if you like, virtues, Christian virtues founded on a, if you like, a society bringing about God's kingdom on earth as it is in heaven. Really is very profound. Now, by their fruits you will know them. It's a very important observation. Jesus warned us about that. If we look at the message coming from the media, there is lack of faith, lack of hope, and there is actually antagonism towards hatred. So it is the deconstruction of civilization that we're witnessing, and this is a deliberate campaign. When Nesta Webster, when she wrote that book after much research, Secret Societies and Subversive Movements, she reinforced again and again the different players under the different titles, but the different players, their objective was to deconstruct society. It was to deconstruct civilization and send us back into a, in a sense, if you like, a time of barbarism. And this is where our leaders, whatever flavour, colour or disposition they have, this is where our leaders are taking us. And it is up to us, it's up to us individuals to actually sow the seeds of faith, hope and love between each other, working it through with, firstly, your family, your friends and your neighbours. Your thoughts, please, Robert Klinck.
Well, I would comment on what Wally had to say about ascertaining the source of the policies that are coming through that are so detrimental to society. And I think there's no way we could really know what the ultimate source is. There's no way that we have access to discussions behind the curtains and all this sort of thing. So I think, in fact, that it is sort of a futile effort to try to do too much analysis of where the ultimate evil is coming from. We can see the intermediate evil all too well in all these institutions that are promoting policies that are taking away our freedoms and confining us, limiting the possibilities for our lives. But we don't really have to understand what the evil behind this, because as social creditors, we can promote an alternative policy. We can promote a policy of decentralization. As long as we understand the mechanism of the financial system, and social creditors have analyzed that quite thoroughly, then we can present an alternative. So I don't think we should be concentrating too much on studying the depths of conspiracy. And I think conspiracy is actually a very appropriate word for this, because although it's been discredited, a great deal of what transpires in society, even sometimes within families, is conspiracy, people getting together in order to achieve an objective that is hidden from other people. That is the essence of conspiracy. And we've seen this now even admitted by politicians. I noted the other day that in 2009, the World Health Organization changed the definition of pandemic. The previous definition, or at least description, had always included high rates of mortality. They dropped that from the definition. So now they can impose all these strictures on people's freedom just if there is some kind of infection, a widespread infection going around. So this goes back to 2009. It was a change that was made obviously with a view to the future. And we're in that future now. They can play with the mortality rates. I mean, we all know that these have been vastly exaggerated because death with COVID is not the same as death from COVID. And this is what we see all the time, even in newspaper articles when they're listing the latest number of deaths. It's always with COVID, and very seldom do they give the ages of the people who have died. Normally, if you do get that information, it's going to be people who are near the end of life anyway. So that is an aspect of conspiracy, I would say. Also, the Fabian Society that was set up in 1884, that was specifically and intentionally designed to penetrate society and take it over for the cause of Marxism, but it was done surreptitiously. It was a conspiracy, an admitted conspiracy. Their symbol was a wolf in sheep's clothing. So. And also, I don't know, there was a professor at the London School of Economics, Harold Lasky. And if you look at the number of politicians and top economists who were sent to that man to study under his tutelage, you'd have to say that this was a plan to spread this man's influence throughout the world. Well, he was a self-proclaimed Marxist, and all kinds of people went there. I know even our former finance minister did, Pierre Trudeau, our former prime minister did, even John Fitzgerald Kennedy did. He studied under this Lasky fellow at the London School of Economics. So this is an aspect of controlling policy in a way that is done behind the curtains. We've had politicians, in fact, who've specifically admitted that politics is not as it appears to be. They're just front men who are the people we elect, and we assume that they're in control of policy. But Benjamin Disraeli, for example, said that the revolutions in 1848 were controlled by people no one was aware of. And he said if you could follow them through and understand the underground workings of them, you would see that they were controlled by people who were linked together, although they were in different countries, and that they all had an understanding, and they were cooperating for a common end. Woodrow Wilson, too, in just after the First World War, said that there was in society a hidden power. He said it was so subtle and so frightening that men in politics were afraid even to whisper about it. Well, this is a former president of the United States who's saying, I'm not the power. There's something much deeper that is controlling events. So I think the point that there is a conspiracy has to be admitted. Actually, probably lots of conspiracies, but there is a central conspiracy, and that's leading to the establishment of this new world order. But as I said, I think that just promoting social credit policies gives us an alternative to trying to have to understand all the details of the machinations of these people who are trying to take over the world.
That's thank you for that, Robert. That's certainly profound, and it's so very, very important. The actual, if you like, the outworkings of the social credit policy are reflected in decentralisation, are actually reflected in the empowering of the individual to make choices, independent choices for themselves. Whereas the Great Reset that we're watching is about a world elite controlling every facet of your life from cradle to grave. And it is diametrically opposed to all things that may have any sort of self-esteem and virtue that come from them, any sort of individual initiative, creative initiative, a spark of inquisitiveness would all be suppressed under this Great Reset. Whereas the opposite of it is, if you like, the Great Reset, in my view, is like turning freedom or turning God upside down. And that obviously is a very important consideration. Are you meant to be a free, autonomous, self-functioning, independent human being, working in community, freely working in community to bring about good for yourself and for others? Or are you meant to be just a slave? And so this is really, really important for us to consider it. Now, Wallace, how are you going there? He might be asleep. Okay, David Smith, I'm going to call on you to continue your thoughts, please.
Yeah, I guess I missed the punchline there. The article that I put in my notes is from the current Censored magazine. Jonathan Ison's the editor. And he points out that the real enemy, the top of the food chain enemy, is only visible when we confront the ways that we ourselves, that's us, individuals, the way we ourselves manifest it by betraying the life force within us. We give away our sovereignty, is what he's saying. We give away our sovereignty to government, and government naturally and automatically steps in and takes God's place. And we can cast the blame back to ourselves rather than looking for an enemy. Whenever we turn to government, we are leaving God out of the picture, so to speak. And I think we've got to turn the tables on that and show people that everything we need for life, health, and is given us by the Creator, not by government. And money, we've got to keep working on that. Money is only issued as debt these days, and it's designed to enslave.
Thank you for that, David. That's most profound. I know that I was involved about 30 or even 40 years ago. I was involved in alternative financial schemes, and when we consider the money economy, the economy only functions because of the, if you like, the money system. But you actually can use alternatives to the money economy, and you can still be quite viable if you can consider other options. I think it's really important to actually start thinking creatively and start thinking outside the box. These things are coming at us. They're quite formidable, no question about it. But at the same time, an alternative financial system, an alternative assessment of what the economy is capable of doing, and an alternative method of distribution. This to me is critical thinking. An alternative method of distribution, rather than these elites who have, if you like, filched the financial system. They have perverted it for their own ends, and this has been hundreds of years in the making, hundreds of years, at least since 1694, Bank of England establishment. An alternative method, an alternative way of thinking about the actual economy. To me, that's really, really important to look at what you can and can't do with your neighbour, with your friends, bringing about if you like, a way of developing community, a way of placing faith and trust and hope in each other. These are all important considerations if you're going to actually participate in a system, and that's why faithful dealings is so important. If you have an alternative money system and people can't be trusted, they demonstrate that they can't be trusted by their fruits, then obviously they can't participate in it. But if you have people who can be trusted, who demonstrate that they can, then of course you've got these realistic options to at least take the heat out of the current situation. Take the heat out of it and be as self-reliant as possible. Plant those fruit trees that you need. Put that potato crop in. Put those carrots and peas in. Have your own chooks, your own eggs, all these sorts of practical things, so that as you're attempting to work this scenario that's unfolding through, as you're attempting to work it through, you're in a stronger position. At least you're not as reliant. You're independent and self-reliant, and you're building up your own community. Because this situation, this world situation that's unfolding in front of us, it is dire. It is dire. I wrote last year that Western civilization was actually fighting for its very existence, and I don't detract, I don't take away one dot point from what I wrote before Christmas. If anything, it seems to have appeared to have actually got worse. So it really is something that we need to consider, something we need to work through with our neighbour, with our friends, with our family, that it's building the social cohesion, building the trust, building the faith, building the hope, loving your neighbour as you love yourself. These are really, really, at this time, really important principles. And on the basis of that, you are building the social cohesion to the point where you can look on the financial system, money economy. Look on the money economy and let those blinkers that have been put over your eyes as nothing happens without money. It still happens. It's happening right now. The issue of credit is happening in Australia. Our federal government is issuing the credit and people are still surviving. Industry is lunched. The middle class is lunched. A huge percentage of people have gone on to benefits. But if the money is issued, then sufficient process continues to go, and it becomes a time of, if you like, leisure, of contemplation, of consideration. Did everyone get up to no good during the last 12 months? I don't believe so. I think they were still productive. I think that you consider some of the parents who decided to keep their children home from school. Was that destructive? In actual fact, I don't think it was. I think it was actually quite constructive, that homeschooling had a new impetus, that mothers love their children and they think, well, hang on, am I going to actually expose my child to all this array of if you like, bullying in the schoolyard, or indoctrination from the teachers, or what would you call it, imposition of medical procedures on you? Is all this something that you consider that you should allow or shouldn't allow? And so the homeschooling option was given a new impetus, and it is that same type of consideration that you've got to take in this current predicament. You've got to take the initiative in your part of ship, in your little space and time, your place, your neighbourhood. Wallace Klinck, you're back with us. It's good to see you. Your thoughts, please.
Well, I think that bearing in mind the nature as human beings, as we perceive it, certainly as Christians, I think that the onus is on us always to seek the truth and to exercise responsible discretion and action, and not to accept something that is handed to us from above. We must always be aware that there is a purpose to what is going on, and we have to really show the best responsible attitude to our approach to these things. We cannot just accept things that are dished out to us, and I think that is what is being done primarily, is trying to put us in that kind of a position where we are willing to simply accept what we're presented with, and that is not responsible action. It's not moral action. It's not ethical, and I think there's a tendency for people to do that. And it's a very, very fatal tendency, because it allows policies to be introduced and affected which you don't understand, you don't know their origin, and unless you're quite perceptive, you don't know their consequences. So I think that and of course there's always fear, which is a factor that is introduced to try and freeze initiative. That is irresponsible. But again, this financial system is such that makes us all dependent in a way that controls us through fear. And we cannot allow fear to control our responses to the situations that we find that we are presented with. Because fear, when you're in retreat, you're not likely to gain the upper hand or to seek to achieve a victory. You have to be positive, and you have to be non-compliant, in the sense that you don't accept everything you're told. You accept responsibility for what is going on, and sooner or later we're going to have to do that, because it seems as though there is, whether you take it that there is some kind of whether these are all secular influences that we seem to be subject to, or whether there is another dimension to them, is difficult for us to say, and especially if we do not seek spiritual discernment. So it's a very difficult thing in a way, but basically it comes down to doing the right thing and not allowing ourselves to be influenced by things which our conscience. Mankind was born with conscience, and if we allow that conscience to be ignored, we are doing what is the wrong thing. We're doing the immoral thing, and we're doing the thing that makes us susceptible to evil. So it's I don't know. It's hard to know just where all of this policy that is obviously not good, not in our interests where it's originating. But as we were saying, I don't know what's the thing for us to do is to seek the truth and to try and implement the truth, because merely speculating on the source of damaging policies is not ultimately, it may have to be done, but I think that what we have to do is to seek the truth and try to implement the truth first and foremost.
Thank you for that, Wally. That's beautifully put. To seek the truth and implement the truth. And what we're seeing, you mentioned the word fear, and of course, to me, the word fear is the opposite of faith. Faith and hope, if you like. Fear is the opposite. So yes, fear of what? Fear of COVID, fear of death, fear of life, fear of living, fear of debt, fear of shortage, fear of hunger. All these things are very real. And in order to overcome them, you've got to consider a fair and equitable system. You've got to consider an outworking of a time of abundance. There has never been a time in the history of mankind where he's been able to produce so much. With automation, the 4 industrial revolutions, if you like, when we first harnessed by men coming together, the increment of association, the first industrial revolution, men and women coming together, working in, if you like, factories. And then there was the introduction of steam energy. And then the third was electrical energy. And the fourth, in my view, was advanced control and robotics. 4 industrial revolutions, all in the period of about 250 years. And so we've gone from 85% of the population working in agriculture in order to feed us to less than 5% in order to feed us. So the food security is there. There's no question about food security. The question is one of distribution. Can we get sufficient so that we can, well, if there's sufficient food, what is the next worry? Well, okay, you need clothes on your back and you need a house to live in. But we've got plenty of houses, we've got plenty of clothing. If food is there, we should be a time of security, a time of abundance, a time of faith and goodwill between man. But we're not actually experiencing it. What we're experiencing is a time of great uncertainty, and this is political. And if you follow it through, as Nesta Webster has highlighted in her research, there is this hidden hand, this facet, and yes, you can explore it all you like, but the bottom line is that we have systems in place. They're called constitutions, they're called the common law, they're called the law of the land, habeas corpus, trial by jury, all these things that we have in place. And we have to insist that those things be restored to order, because they have been deconstructed. They have been actually dismembered by our institutions, by individuals working in concert but working secretly against the well-being, the actual civilization, the actual community, the culture. Everything that's been built up over the last several thousand years is being deconstructed in front of us as a concerted effort. And the test, by their fruits you will know them. By their fruits. And if you look at what's going on in America, the whole outworking, the media role, the 2 political party roles, the politicians' roles, the opinion makers' roles, if you like, and behind all of it, you've got to say there's design. And it's no different than in the time of the French Revolution. There was certainly design and intent in the French Revolution, and that has been researched and studied, and Nesta Webster has done that in her work. You can read about it, the design, the intent, the purpose. Your thoughts and closing comments, please, Robert Klinck.
Yes, well, Wally said that we are all by nature born with a conscience. I think that is another way of saying that we have a primary responsibility to our Creator, who is God. And our conscience is what enables us to fulfill our responsibilities to God. So when you have the state controlling more and more aspects of your life, it automatically implies that you are controlling less of the decisions in your life, which means that you cannot possibly have the relationship to your creator that you're supposed to have. So this is a thing that people don't often think about, I think, but every time the state acquires more power, it means that your relationship with your creator is being subverted, is being weakened. There are fewer and fewer opportunities for you to respect it and to fulfill it. So the modern tendency of state development is to make everything communal. This communist movement is the most extreme aspect of that, I guess, but they want to put people into groups. They want to make them think in terms of political correctness, not in terms of what they should be doing according to their consciences, what they should be doing in terms of what they perceive to be right. So this is undoubtedly a subversion of the individual life that we are supposed to be living, and it's a destruction of our very essence, I would say. We've gone so far from the point of departure. You know, you look at little kids, and they're in touch with something. I think that Wordsworth said that there were clouds of glory associated with little children because they have come from their creator, their father. And I think that's true. And every effort imaginable is being made to separate us from that source of our being today. It's a deliberate policy for sure. And Arnie, you said that the world is upside down. Well, Douglas says, C.H. Douglas, the founder of social credit, quoted that saying that the devil is God upside down. And we're seeing it all around us today. Every policy that is presented to us has a perversity that is actually astonishing. Just gets pushed and pushed and pushed from every direction, harder and harder. And every time this is imposed upon us, it is destroying our ability to function as ethical persons and as people who are tied into the source of the universe, the creation of the universe, which is love.
Beautiful. Thank you for that, Robert. Your thoughts and closing comments, please, David Smith.
I'll just close on pointing out the farcical nature of everything that's happening around us in Australia today as far as these lockdowns. It's all a matter of government wielding their authority and cementing their authority over people. And you only have to look at some of the calls they've made just before Christmas. Premier of Queensland allowed a football game when everything else was locked down because it would bring a lot of money into Brisbane and the community. Now that just makes a total farce of the health regulation that was the reason for the lockdown. Same thing today, the cricket's going to go ahead. Doesn't matter that you've got a medical appointment in a capital city. You might be able to get there, but you can't go home again. It's a total farcical situation, and the more they try to implement their authority, the more the public is seeing the fallacy in it all. So I'll leave it there, I think.
No worries. Thank you for that, David. That's a good and solid summary of assessing the anomalies, the clear anomalies. I sort of consider those things as, if you like, to add to the confusion. They add something so apparent, so obviously wrong, and there it is, people pointing to it, and of course they ignore you. Your thoughts and closing comments, please, Wallace Klinck.
Well, there's no doubt about it that I think we have been seduced into relying and admiring reason. And reason itself can lead you to any conclusion depending upon what evidence you might have to stumble upon. Reason has its utility, but not unless it is inspired by, as Bob said, love. This is something that goes beyond reason as a mechanical process. And if we think that we can solve our problems by merely using reason in a clever manner without without due recognition of love, which is a supreme law of God, of the universe, and I think we're headed for very serious. The expression "God is dead," I'm afraid, is a major delusion. And whatever we mean when we say the word God, I think we had best bear in mind that there is a power of consciousness in the universe. There is a point of origin for us. And that we must have some kind of a inner nature, some kind of a part in the fulfillment of the laws, the principles that are inherent in that universal consciousness or law. And it's because when men rely strictly on their own reason, the best laid plans of men and mice, getting off after astray or agley, as they say. But and I think that it has something to do with a maybe an unknown, not understood, but a spiritual attunement with the universe. And man has to have sufficient humility to recognize that without recognizing that there is this superior body of love, understanding, knowledge, or whatever it is, we simply cannot function according to our absolute nature because we are constructed, we are created in that context. And if you try and step out of the context in which you are created, you're going into uncharted and very dangerous territory. There is something about life that goes beyond the mere material. There is something that definitely extends beyond mere material affairs. And we were put in a situation where we're spiritual beings, we are physical beings. And it is essential for us to meet our destiny by giving due regard to both elements of our created being. Christ said, "Come, let us reason." But he also brought the Holy Spirit to live amongst us or within us. And if we don't access that Spirit, we can't begin to really fulfill our destiny. And I think that there's been a tremendous effort made to break down our faith, our hope, our belief, painting it somehow as foolishness. But the real foolishness is breaking down that faith, guided by the love of God. And yes, I think that we have every means, both physical and spiritual, to attain that end. In fact, there has been a rush of developments in the past recent history, which is almost like some kind of a rush to come to a fulfillment, which certain elements obviously are attempting to impede as much as they can. It's almost as though evil is jealous of the potential that exists for us and wants to, because it's almost as though they themselves are asserting their position as God, and which is a tremendous error and an evil thing to do, because no man can demonstrate his competence to take over the administration of the universe. Somehow, something has to exist within our minds and within our souls, which acts as an attraction, as a guide. And we need that guide because it's something that is innate within us. And if we simply abandon what we are, the end result can only be disaster. And I think that's what these people are doing. They have rebelled against God, and they have attempted to appropriate the powers.
Okay. Thank you for that, Wally. That was beautifully put, and I'm sorry that we've lost your line feed, but it's certainly beautifully put. They've attempted to expropriate God himself and let man, or place man, as the pinnacle of all things. That really is what humanism is about. It's what Marxism is about. It's what it presents, that the highest level of being and of thinking is man, and of course the reason, the left hemisphere thinking, as Dr. Ian McGilchrist has taken great pains to show us, the left hemisphere thinking that causes us to sit in reason and not actually consider the world, the universe, the outworking, the embodiment of policy, the embodiment. That's what we're seeing today in America, in Australia, in Canada. We're seeing the embodiment of policy, the lockdown, the subterfuge, the deceit, the lies. All of these things are breaking down faith, they're breaking down hope, they're breaking down love, and they're meant to destroy. That is their purpose. And it is up to individuals like yourself, like each one of us, to do all that they can to restore faith, hope, and love. The greatest of these is love. Thanks very much for joining us today, gentlemen. It's been a beaut forum. It's difficult times, and we need to rise to the occasion, and I believe that's what we've done today. So thank you so much. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you, Arnie, for the opportunity to discuss these matters.